And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off.
Go ahead and say it, Ed. Go Dragons!
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
You like that? You like that?
F it. Jamar's down there somewhere.
The New Orleans Saints select Marcus Davenport.
No!
Splash Brothers. Yeah.
It's playoff. Keep going, Brace.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Going on, man. I'm excited to get this thing rolling.
Yeah, it's something we've been talking about for a while now, and as the NBA season is gearing up, I believe 12 days away, and as my freaking baseball season just ended, thanks Braves. I wanted to go ahead and get basketball, turning the page immediately. But yeah, we're gonna get into this pretty soon. Kind of just give y'all an intro of what the show is and everything, and our vision behind it, and then we'll do a Eastern Conference preview this episode. I guess one of the more interesting off seasons for the East in a while. And then we'll give some Eastern Conference predictions at the end, predicting our way all the way through the Eastern Conference Championship. And then next episode will be our Western Conference predictions, and then we'll crown each of our champions. And yeah, that'll be it. You got anything else to say before we do this?
Oh man, I'm just ready to get going, man. We've talked about it for a while. I'm glad to see it, see us making it happen. So,
absolutely.
And of course, man, yeah, definitely the East had a wild off season. So there's going to be a lot of things that some things need to just wait and see, and some stuff, we got a little bit more a better idea of what some teams are, and it's going to be exciting, man.
Yeah. With some of those big moves that happen, I think it gets a little bit under-talked in terms of how, it takes time for the fits. I mean, as a Heat fan, you saw it with LeBron and the Heatles. It took that they were 500 team after a couple months, and then it finally clicked.
Right. Almost got Spo fired.
Yeah. It takes time for these mega teams to happen, and as we've seen with so many of the trades in the past couple years, the mega trades that do happen leave your bench and your depth just gone. And as a Warriors fan, I'm a big believer in strength in numbers, and it feels like a lot of teams go for more of the star power instead of the depth. And I mean, the Nuggets team was pretty deep. That Bucks team that won the championship a couple years ago, pretty deep. The Warriors always deep. So how good does the super team model work? We'll definitely see this year between a couple of these new teams that are forming, I guess, more of a mega super team than usual. But yeah, so Coast to Coast is the name of the show. Pretty much, if you're a basketball fan, you know the term. It's pretty much a very, very common NBA and basketball lingo, I guess you could say, but it also has a special meaning with both of our fandoms, because I'm a Warriors fan. If anyone knows me, they know my love for the Warriors, live and breathe that stuff, and no, I am not a bandwagon. I'll die on that. Since I've been a fan since 2012, thank you, Harrison Barnes, for going to the Warriors and getting drafted there. That's the guy that I live and breathe on as my fandom, even though he left us very sadly and lost us a championship possibly in 2016.
Right.
I'm not going to get on that. But yeah, I'm a Warriors fan, and Nick is a huge Heat fan, and I don't think you can get, I mean, maybe Portland to Miami, but that's about as far away of teams as you can.
I don't even want to hear Portland to Miami.
Oh yeah, that no one ever goes from there. Maybe that's why Dame didn't go. It was just too far of a journey. But yeah, tell everybody about your Heat love.
Man, I really didn't start getting really into sports in general at a very young age. I mean, my family and parents weren't really into it. We watched a little LSU football, starting to come into that 2007 championship season, and I kind of started picking up on some stuff then, which I played a little basketball here and there, but I didn't really start watching the NBA until the 2008 season. Of course, that was when the Celtics went on their run, and
Yeah,
I mean, that was my family's favorite team.
that
Just as
that
people
was
that was just turning
literally mine as well. That's
yeah,
whenever I
man.
got
So
my start was that '08 Celtics championship.
right. So, I mean, that was kind of that was honestly my first team. I mean, I didn't know anything about any of it. I was just watching it on TV,
Oh yeah,
here
I've
and
I've
there. But
still I've still got a Celtics hat and shirt in my closet that I try to
yeah,
forget that I have. I think I have a KG jersey too. But
yeah,
yeah, after that finals of the Warriors, they're on the bad list now. So
right. So, but man, I I would watch the playoffs. I mean, I was a young kid, tuning in a little bit. But what really started uh my Heat fandom was actually the Celtics were about to sweep the Heat, and I don't think it was the year after the championship. It may have been the 2009-10 year. Um, but anyway, they were about to sweep the Heat, and I think it was Game 4, and Dwayne Wade came out and just had one of those type of games where he was just not going to let them go down like that. And I mean, I decided then, man, when I saw that, I was like, all right, I said that's my guy. So I started rolling with them then, and I got kind of I got lucky as a fan with the greatest player of all time deciding to come to my newly adopted team, not long after I had adopted them. So, that was a wild ride, but yeah, man, I've been just a huge Dwayne Wade fan, more than anything ever since then. I mean, I've got an 11-year-old son named Wade that was born the day of game 1 of the Miami OKC finals.
oh,
So, I mean, it's always been just the
getting into
way
the
that
world of champion.
right. So he just everything about him as a player I gravitated towards, and then him as a father I've always admired, and just the way he handles himself. And so of course that if you're a Dwayne Wade fan, you're a Heat fan. So of course then I've just fallen in love with the organization over all these years and the way that they operate. So but yeah, man, it's been a few ups and downs, I mean, but I mean, just like everybody else. But yeah, man, I mean, that was pretty much where it started. So
Yeah, it's crazy that we both started with that '08 Celtics team, and
yep,
I
that
don't.
is crazy.
And at the time, I despised Kobe, but
Right, me too.
but that next year, seeing Kobe do what he did, and then
Uh-huh.
winning it again the next, like I started to grow an appreciation of Kobe
Yep,
then.
that's exactly right. A respect. Yep.
Yeah, but it was definitely all hate in that Celtics series.
Yep.
But yeah, it's kind of funny. You became a Heat fan because of a legend in Dwayne Wade, top 3 shooting guard, I would say. And then
Right.
yeah, I'm
I
over here
agree.
with Harrison Barnes, who played 4
Barnes.
seasons for the Warriors.
Yeah.
Not to say that I don't. I mean, now if you ask me my favorite players, it's Steph, Clay, Dre, in that
Right.
order. Oh no, I don't know. I think it might be Steph, Dre, Clay, and then HB. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's always Harrison Barnes forever for getting me to that team. Even though
That's
I
it,
wanted
man.
him to
Yep.
go to, I think I wanted him to go to Portland. It's either
Hmm.
Portland or Sacramento, and my God, how my life would have changed if that would have happened. But
Absolutely.
luckily he fell to 7. But yeah, and so yeah, Coast to Coast. That's the name of the podcast. Our vision is to just bring as much NBA content as possible. If you listen to the main episodes of this podcast, the ones that are just titled DBS episode, blah blah blah. I think we're at 158 now. Those during football season, so pretty much July till February or March, and maybe even April because the NFL draft carries on and off season. Pretty much that whole time, we're all football. We have a couple opening segments here and there about baseball with the playoffs or NBA if some big news or big trade happens, but it's pretty much a football podcast. I mean, we all started the podcast because of our love for football and our fantasy football group and stuff like that. So we don't get the time to talk about the NBA that I would just. I mean, NBA. I don't know if I can say it's my favorite league or favorite sport just because I love the NFL so much, but the Warriors are by far my number one team that I live or die because of them. And it's been that way for over a decade now, which is insane to say, but this will give me a chance to get all that NBA talk out of my system that I need to do. And we plan on getting you a show. I want to say 3 to 4 times a month. So maybe every week, maybe every other week, something like that. With the NBA, it's hard to. I mean, I know there's some podcasts that go 3 or 4 times a week about the NBA, and to me, that's just a little too much because, I mean, sometimes you might not play but one game in 4 days, and also like the NBA, there's so much variance where something that happens in this game that just feels like the end of the world, you win the next 3 and everything changes. So it's hard in my opinion to talk about the NBA like every single week or about your one team. But as I know Worldwide Wob on Twitter says, the NBA never sleeps and there's always some type of drama going on. So we'll have plenty to talk about along the way. But yeah, I'm hoping for, I'll say at least 3 episodes a month, maybe 4, maybe 5. Maybe we have a drop-in episode when the Heat make a big trade for some guard, James Harden or something.
They won't.
Or when Chris Paul gets punched by Draymond, something happens, So
now that I think that's more likely than the Heat making a trade.
Hey, who knows? Apparently the Warriors went to San Quentin prison, and Chris Paul just looks like a great leader. So who knows, man?
Is that the trip that Draymond didn't go on?
Draymond's ankle's hurt. He has a reason.
Oh, okay.
And then that's pretty much everything with the introduction. And then I guess our layouts for the episode. What I'm hoping to do with these side podcasts, I like to try to keep them under an hour, just because whenever you open up your Spotify or your Apple Podcast or whatever you listen on, it's so much different. Or whenever you see 59 minutes, it don't look that bad. You're like, oh, I can listen to that real quick. If you see an hour and 13 seconds, oh no, I don't want to listen to that yet. So I try to keep everything under an hour. And then so what I'm thinking for that is 10 to 15 minutes for the Heat, 10 to 15 minutes for the Warriors, and then somewhere around 30-ish minutes for the rest of the NBA. Pretty much getting our teams covered with all the passion we're going to have for those throughout the year, and then covering whatever else crazy drama is going on around the league. How bad Damian Lillard is performing in Milwaukee, hopefully, huh?
Right.
But yeah, that's pretty much how that's going to go. And you got anything else you want to add to that before we get into this?
Only thing I want to add, man, I want to shout out my guys on the Ruby Wise Panther basketball team. We had a good practice today. I'm going to sleep good tonight because of it. But yeah, I just want to shout out my guys. That's all.
Hey, at least you'll get good sleep, because I'm not sleeping anything after the freaking Braves. Hey, it's not as bad as the Warriors whenever we lost that, and I went and sat upstairs by myself for I think till 3 a.m. and just recorded
I remember you
hour and a half podcast. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I just couldn't accept that. But yeah, and now the NBA season's 12 days away. We are almost freaking here.
Man, it seems like it just ended a few days ago. Season.
I guess with all the when is Damian getting traded stuff that's been going on for freaking forever, it just feels like it's been constantly talked about. Off season,
I love that. I love that about the NBA.
Yes, by far the best off season.
Exactly, absolutely. That's exactly what I was about to say, man. I may enjoy the off season more than the regular seaon.
Yeah,
I mean it's my favorite time.
The off season, the trade deadline, like all that stuff is just great. It really builds up the drama and everything about the league. And
there's nothing else like it in sports.
Yeah, as a huge baseball fan, that's one of the things I despise about the offseason is the MLB free agency. Like, speaking of, the Bryce Harper, who just demolished the Braves and and ended our season. Off season begins, I believe, late November, early December. He didn't sign his contract whenever he signed to the Phillies until February. Like, you're waiting 3 months to have the biggest name in baseball sign like that. Kevin Durant signed 4 days, and it seemed like forever. It was crazy. But yeah, let's get into this. So let's start with let's start with the Bucks. It's hard not to whenever you look at the East. I think everybody has them as the number one team, or most national media and any gambling site that you look at has them as the betting favorite. So, what do you think about Damian Lillard? Obviously, you've been all up in it for months and have a lot more opinions on it than I do as a Heat fan. So, what's your initial reaction to the move from Milwaukee?
Well, first of all, I hated it. But not for the Bucks. I think this year will be, which I feel like a lot of people say this every year, but especially this year. I think this year will be a case study on what are the effects of trading your depth for star power.
Yep.
I mean, the Bucks, the Celtics, the Suns, you can just go through the league and see these teams that are just, going all in.
Yeah.
And, some guys, like some teams, especially the Bucks, to me, it makes sense. I mean, Giannis started, throwing those hints out there that, he may not finish his career in Milwaukee if things don't get on the right track. And credit to those guys, man. They jump on it. They didn't take it lightly. Just like the last time when I thought there was a chance he may come to Miami. If he didn't sign that extension or sign that new contract, they went out and got Drew Holiday. And, of course, ironically enough, when the next time that he gave another hint, Drew Holiday was gone, I do wonder what that's gonna be like, trading the two-way talent that is Drew Holiday, of course, for just an offensive just supernova in Dame.
And liability on the other end.
Exactly. I think that's gonna be very interesting. I'm sure that throughout the season they'll make a couple tweaks, and I'm not sure of what if any picks they have that they can attach to somebody to maybe get a little more depth or whatever. But I think it's definitely going to be interesting. I've seen a couple of things where Dame has publicly come out now and said, Miami was still where he wanted to go. I mean, it wasn't, but I mean, you can't get much if you're not going to go to Miami. You might as well go somewhere you have a good chance to win.
Yeah.
And Milwaukee definitely gives him that chance, a chance that he has not had in Portland these past several years.
Yeah. I mean, if you're Milwaukee, you lose some depth, but I think they'll be okay trying to replace Grayson Allen for keeping Giannis essentially, because Drew Holiday for Damian Lillard is practically the big trade, and then a couple picks or pick swaps, whatever it was. But pretty much your only depth piece you lost directly in that trade was Grayson Allen. But there is a lot to replace. Javon Carter they lost in the offseason. Joe Ingles, who didn't really get back into his Utah self in Milwaukee after the ACL injury, but he was still a solid player. Wesley Matthews, not much there. They did sign Malik Beasley, who was okay for the Lakers, but wasn't very good. Didn't really get much run in the playoffs towards the end.
Right.
Draft pick wise, Andre Jackson from UConn could be a good player. Doesn't really shoot the ball, but he's pretty much good at everything else. Chris Livingston, the Kentucky kid, who I think he was the one that people were thinking would have gone early second, but he said, I have a promise from a team, and it was Milwaukee at 58. He's a very highly touted kid coming out of high school that has potential, but I don't think he'll be a factor this year. You bring in Rolo to back up Brooke. I mean, that's nothing but fun. Campaign, they just signed him like last week. Solid bench guard. I've always liked him, but still, I'm not sure that's the kind of guy you need whenever you have Damian Lillard as your one. You might want more of a defensive type of guard off the bench.
Right.
But it's going to be interesting. Let's take a look at their roster overall. So, I mean, you're obviously starting Giannis, Damian Lillard, Brook Lopez. I'm guessing Bobby Portis is going to get the start. I don't know if he's been starting the past couple of years or not. And then Chris Middleton's still there. For how long, I don't know. He might be another piece that they end up moving on from, if not this year, at the end of the year. Let's look.
I could potentially see a Dame, Connaughton, Middleton, Giannis, Lopez lineup also with Portis as the sixth man.
Yeah,
But
so the
it's very reminiscent.
ESPN
Go
has
ahead.
Malik Beasley starting at the 2, and then
Wow, okay.
Bobby Portis coming off the bench. I would not start Malik Beasley if I was them. Does not give you much defensively. Yeah, he's more offense, but with Dame and Giannis is certainly not nothing on offense anymore. Brook Lopez, pretty good shooter for his size. I would go Connaughton at the 2. I would.
Right.
And then I mean Dame, Connaughton, Middleton, Giannis, and then Brook with Bobby off the bench, Jay Crowder, Malik Beasley, Campaign. Not a bad team at all. And your depth isn't as terrible as it should be whenever you trade for a superstar like that.
Right.
But it is going to be interesting to see how they hide Dame's weakness on the defensive end. But at the same time, they're getting so much more on the offensive end. Like
right.
Drew Holiday, all-star level player, elite defender, if not the best on-ball defender in the NBA in terms of guards at least. But on the offensive end, he was, I don't want to say limited because, I mean, there wasn't necessarily a thing he couldn't do, but he's not Damian Lillard.
Right.
There's very few people that are Damian Lillard in the NBA. I mean, Dame's probably a top 3, top 5, just straight up pure scorer in the league. And if there's anyone that can hide his defensive weaknesses, Giannis and Brook Lopez, 2 of the best defenders in the NBA, they're going to do everything they can to hide that. I mean, was it last year they finished 2 and 3 in the DPOY? Or they were definitely in the discussion, right around there with Bam and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're always up there.
Yeah. I mean, Brook gets better with age, which is crazy to say for a 7-footer. But
right.
I mean, back in Brooklyn, he wasn't even doing anything besides just playing in the low post and being on a sucky team. He goes to Milwaukee, he becomes a 3-point threat and an all defensive level player. It's crazy. Yep. You got anything else to say with the Bucks?
The Damian Lillard trade, it's reminiscent to me of the Clippers Paul George trade, which I mean is on 2 different stratospheres of what the Clippers gave up to get Paul George as opposed to what the Bucks gave up to get Damian Lillard. But the similarities they have to me is you couldn't just look at it as the Clippers gave up this to get Paul George. Because the Clippers gave up what they gave up to get Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Not technically that's not how it worked, but you know what I'm saying. And
you gave up this to get Damian Lillard and Giannis.
and keep Giannis happy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that it was already a steal to me. I mean, anybody else would have had to, anytime a player of that caliber hits the market, I mean, you'd have to decimate a team to land somebody like that.
Yeah.
So for them to not only give up what they gave up to get Damian Lillard, but also in the process probably keep Giannis, maybe for the rest of his career. I mean, that's just a no-brainer home run, and I mean,
Giannis is. I mean, after that championship run, Giannis immediately started getting talk of top 20 player all time, like right then, which was, in my opinion, a little soon, but he's definitely on that path. And
right.
It's kind of crazy to look at his career and kind of put him on that historic level already, but especially at his age. I mean, he's like, what, 28, 29? He's still crazy young.
I think he's like 6 months younger than me, which is insane.
Yeah, 28.
He'll turn 29 in December, I think. Yep.
Yeah. Had 9th season, and he's I mean, if he's not the best player in the NBA, he's number 2, and that's how it's been for 3 or 4 years now. And keeping Giannis at the expense of Grayson Allen, a couple first-round picks, and Drew Holiday, while also getting Damian Lillard, you'll live with that.
Yep.
One more thing. Speaking of the trading your depth or potential depth for a just superstar or star player, big role player like that, I always think back to the Lakers and Westbrook. I did not like that move at all right when it happened. I was actually
I don't think anybody did.
no,
I don't.
I was in Vegas for my 21st birthday at the time, and I told myself before I leave to go back home, I'm putting money on the Warriors to win the championship. And the Lakers traded for Russ the day before I left, and like the odds for the championships, they went from like minus 800 to like minus 500 and the favorites. And I was like, no, like that ain't working. And then, so I mean, I immediately went and put money on my Warriors to win. Ended up cashing that. A little pat on the back there for me. But and then you saw a year later, the Lakers not doing anything good with the big three of AD, LeBron, Russ, and then you trade Russ for bench pieces. You trade Russ for Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley. I'm trying to think who else they even brought in. But you essentially saw the Lakers go from 3 superstars and not much else to now, if you look at their roster, it's 2 superstars and a ton of just bench pieces, role players, guys that are specialists at a couple different areas. Like you have the elite defenders like Vanderbilt, you have the elite shooters, you have those kind of guys. I think that right there is just a testament to depth over stardom, and we'll see how that works out with Dame. Yeah, you still only have 2 quote unquote stars with Dame and Giannis, but I mean, Brook Lopez, great player. Chris Middleton, all-star level player when he's healthy. But I wouldn't be shocked if you see Middleton and possibly even Brook after this year move if it doesn't go the way that they want this year.
Yeah, that's one major difference to me in the Westbrook experiment and this Damian Lillard Giannis duo is, you know, when the Lakers made that trade, man, they gutted their assets. I mean, they had no way to improve their roster outside of the moves that they had already made. I mean, the Bucks still have several pieces. I mean, you think Chris Middleton, he could, you know, you could turn him into stuff. I mean, at the very
you can turn him into 2 or 3 role players,
right? And I mean, that could be the solution. You know, I mean, I guess and it may, you know, the trade deadline may get here, and they may be, you know, like
sitting around 500
crazy
or something.
record, or it could be going great, you know, and it might not even be a thought. But I mean, if it definitely, if the trade deadline gets here and they're underperforming, changes will be made at the trade deadline. I can almost guarantee that, and it may be they may have to make some tough decisions. And I mean, trading Drew Holiday is about as tough a decision as you can get. But but I think more could be in the future if things don't go the way that they're expecting right off the bat.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next team. I think we gotta go Celtics on this one. Pretty much the next biggest team that made moves, and obviously Celtics have been a factor in the East for quite some time now. A lot of just roster franchise changing moves that I did not expect from this team before the offseason. First off, to me, biggest thing, yes, they did get Drew Holiday. We'll get to that in a minute, but they lost Marcus Smart, who in my opinion, made the Celtics succeed, and like was that kind of guy that put them over the edge, got in a team's head. Like you need that kind of guy on your team, and that was Marcus Smart.
He's their Draymond Green and point guard for them.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you tell him he's a guard, he's gonna say no, I'm not. He'll go guard whoever.
Right.
He's just got that dog in him, which is just it's a funny saying, but that's just straight up what he is. But not only that, you lose him, you lose Malcolm Brogdon, solid bench piece. You lose Robert Williams, the Time Lord, Louisiana boy, who was honestly, whenever the Warriors played them, whenever Robert Williams was on the court, everything was harder for the Warriors. I felt like he was that piece that made it a little bit different. When Al Horford's at the 5, we could make offense work. Robert Williams would take us out the game. Thankfully for us, he was hurt at the time. But yeah, he did have some health issues, but losing him is a big thing. Grant Williams, love him or hate him, I know a lot of people hate him. Still a really good player. I think he got under the Heat's skin some. uh, but Gallinari as well didn't really get to play much with Boston, but would have been a good piece, I believe. A lot of pieces they lost. They bring in Drew Holiday, who you think replaces Marcus Smart, probably, but at the same time, I don't know. Drew's probably a better defender straight up than Marcus, and obviously brings you more offensively. But I just don't think he has that edge that Marcus had. And
Right,
with
and he's Drew.
with guys like Brown and Tatum, and now Kristaps, I think you need that Marcus Smart guy. Like that feels like that's what's missing from this team right now.
Right. I mean, Drew is definitely a great vet. I'm sure he's a great locker room guy, but it's hard to replace the heart of a team. You know, especially you can't expect to do that with the new guy coming in. You know, I mean, it's almost like one of the core guys, the few core guys that are left, needs to take that role. But I think definitely there's more to it than just the numbers, you know, on a move like that. So, and I definitely think
straight up
they
skill
lost a
set.
lot.
Straight up skill set. You say Drew Holiday for Marcus Smart. Yeah, I'll take that. But
yeah, on a 2K, you make that trade every day.
Yeah, but there's just so much more to it. And just looking at this Celtics team, and I know this is a very wildly unpopular opinion, or I feel so at least. I've never considered Jason Tatum a straight up one on a championship team. I think he's a 1B type of guy. I think you need someone better than him, because to me Tatum doesn't have. Use it again. I don't think Tatum has that dog in him. It just doesn't. He doesn't play that way. It feels like you can get in his head pretty easily, take him out the game. He doesn't show up in the clutchest scenarios. Like I mean, I know in the Warriors series, Andrew Wiggins put him on the island, and he didn't beat us. He didn't beat us. We tried to let him beat us. He didn't. I don't know about the construction of this team. I think they're going to be really good. I would be shocked if they're not. But at the same time, I could see them just having the same Celtics problems they've had for the past 5+ years in the playoffs. Because Kristaps, if he's healthy, really good player. I do not understand the fit here for that. Al Horford at some point is going to take a drop in play. You would think Robert Williams would have been the guy to fully get the role there, but I guess they still believe in old man Al. And then your bench, Peyton Pritchard just got an extension. I guess, sure. I mean, if you believe in him, yeah, sure. He's the most Celtics looking player there is.
Absolutely.
Derek White,
him and Porzingis.
Yeah. Derek White, good player. Had a really good postseason. Still not like an elite level bench player. Sam Hauser, white Celtic, and then O'Shea Brissett. You've got in your second unit. I'm not sure I've ever watched him play basketball. I know the name, never watched him play. I mean, we're talking about the Bucks' lack of depth. You've got two real bench players for the Celtics, and they're Peyton Pritchard and Derek White. And your big man, Kristaps and Al, one's 38 and the other does not play 82 games. Like, what are you doing?
They are one Porzingis injury away from this entire season being a disaster.
Yeah.
I mean, because if he goes down, and you know, I mean, hopefully he'll be able to you know, play 70 plus, you know, or whatever. But I mean, man, them giving up Rob was something that I was just not expecting. Like you said, he's one of the few defensive bigs that can come into a game and just completely change the game.
Yeah.
One thing also that I've read was that it seems like Derek White has kind of been not promised, but there's kind of an understanding that Derek White may get a lot of starts at point guard, which I find interesting because he had a good postseason. I don't see him as a starting point guard. I mean,
No, he's not a ball handler.
no, I mean, and then I mean, Drew's not an offensive, powerhouse himself, but
No.
that's a heck of that's a pretty good defensive backcourt.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So would
but
that
yeah,
be
man,
would that be moving out of the bench and then going Derek, Drew, Jalen, Jason, Kristaps?
I would think so. I would think
That's
so. And
probably their closing lineup, if I had to guess.
yeah, yeah.
But still, Tatum as your four to me is just like Giannis is eating that up.
See, man, we discussed earlier the I guess it was ESPN that has been releasing their top 100 players or whatever,
Yes.
and I'm sure we'll talk about this on our next episode. But we talked about Shea being 8. The name that stood out to me even more than Shea was Jason. What did they have him 6? I
They
think
have him at 6. You think that's too high or too low?
I think that is too high.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but I know I was honestly a little bit shocked that he wasn't top 5 just because of how people look at him.
Right. And see,
but do you feel that way about him not being like I would just be shocked if he wins a championship as the best player on the team.
Yeah, I think at the very least, I think he's gonna need a different co-star than Jaylen Brown.
Can't go left.
I think possibly. I mean, if you could get somebody on Tatum's level or close to it, there could be arguments made that I think he could win a championship on a team where there are arguments made as to who is the best player.
Yeah.
But when it's a clear Tatum is on one level and then Jalen is on another, I don't think that's a recipe for a championship.
No.
And one thing, man, that I think about this Celtics team, when they played Miami in the playoffs, I mean the story of that series was Jimmy just dogging them, and I mean that was with Marcus Smart, that was with Grant Williams, that was with Rob. I mean, who is going to stop that now? I mean, Jimmy just punked them just over and over and over.
Yeah, he played Jimmy Butler basketball.
And yeah, he had Drew Holiday in hell for what, 5 games? I mean, and I mean they didn't get a Jimmy stopper. I mean, that's one thing for sure. But yeah, man. So it's interesting to me who is gonna of all the teams in the league. Some of those guys on the Celtics would have been my picks on who is not going to take any BS, in a playoff series. And man, Jimmy just walked all over them, So I find it very interesting that the little bit of heart that it seemed like they did have is now gone. So it's going to be interesting to see how all that shakes out.
Yeah, and there was already some concerns last year over the coach and them kind of losing their edge after Udoka's situation and him being out. So, and that's just another factor. Like this, I'm a big believer in Jaylen Brown. I do think he's a really good player. He does have his limitations, but I don't think he can be the second best player on your team. And now, there is I guess a question as to who's better between him and Drew. Some might prefer Drew as an overall basketball player, but I mean Jaylen's still going to be your number 2 scorer on your team at the minimum. It's just there's so much that could go wrong for the Celtics team, and it's very easy to see how. And honestly, I'm just so shocked that they went this route. I thought they would make some kind of big move. I honestly thought it was going to be around Jaylen Brown and not paying him, what was it at the time, the richest contract in history.
Right, like $300 million, I think.
Yeah, I did not think that was going to be the move, but at the same time, I just didn't see them losing guys like Robert Williams, Grant Williams, Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon. Like, that's 4 legitimate 10-plus, 15-plus minute guys in the playoffs and have been for 2 years now. And then, you mean that's 4 guys we just listed, and they got back Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, who has his rookie year, he played 72 games. Since then, his high is 65 last year. But he's usually around the 45, 55 games a season and has only played 10 postseason games. So take that how you want it.
See, the one thing I remember, man, from that Celtics Warriors series, to me, watching it as not a fan of either team, it seemed like the most impactful player for the Warriors was Andrew Wiggins, but the
Absolutely.
most impactful player for the Celtics was Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
During that series,
Because
to me,
we put Wiggins on Tatum, take him out the game. He still had games of 20, but still we didn't let him get 35 on us and beat us. Jaylen
Right.
Brown was getting, I think, Klay Thompson or GP2 on him at the time. Like it was Jaylen Brown was the best scorer on the court for the Celtics.
Right. So yeah, man, it's definitely gonna it's gonna be interesting. It's just that's a stretch. It was something I did not expect at
No,
all.
no.
That kind of core together. I mean, you just don't. And I mean, it's not like they had some epic meltdown. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't the postseason, the dream
The
postseason
Bucks
for them. But
were
I
the
mean,
ones with the meltdown.
exactly. I mean, that's not the type of postseason you have. What, Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals?
Yeah.
To
You were down 3-0, but still game 7.
right. You're in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, and then you tear your whole team down. I mean, you don't see that very often.
Yeah, it's crazy. Let's move on to the next team. Those are going to be obviously the two teams we focus on most, besides the Heat. So let's go ahead and get the Heat out of the way. Let's go to the Heat. So with the Heat, let's see what additions and subtractions we've got. So subtractions, Udonis Haslem. How about that? You're finally gone. That's
Mr.
devastating.
305.
Yeah, I mean, how do you replace that? I mean, obviously, he's probably still going to be around the team. I'm sure if he's not already signed a front office type role, he will soon, or he'll just show up to practice. But on more serious notes, you lose Max Strus, you lose Gabe Vincent. Those are pretty much the only two pieces that were legitimate players for you last year. But at the same time, don't really feel like season ending or like everything's done since they're gone type of guys. You bring in Thomas Bryant, you bring in RJ Hampton, your boy. You get Jaime Jaquez in the first round, veteran type player out of UCLA. Josh Richardson's back, and then that's pretty much it on your additions. So what are you thinking about this Heat team?
I have not heard yet or seen when the parade will be held for getting rid of Zeller. I expect them to have one though. That is an addition by subtraction to me. Man,
he's in New Orleans now, right?
Well, I feel sorry for Chance, man. Now he's got to deal with that. But
you can just go down to New Orleans and thank Cody yourself.
Yeah, those were some rough minutes, man. Watching him come in as a backup to Bam, and that's one big thing that I think is going to become a storyline throughout the year is Thomas Bryant being the backup big.
Yeah.
For
nothing. You got him for like a steal.
When you go from Dwayne Dedman and Zeller over these past couple years to Thomas Bryant, I mean, Thomas Bryant is not Joel Embiid, but he's not Zeller and Dedman either.
Yeah.
And I think NBA Twitter and just the internet in general, or X or whatever it is, but likes to talk, like the Warriors lost Steph Curry and Draymond Green. We lost Gabe Vincent and Max Strus. They had good postseason for us. They each had a couple of standout games.
Well, one of them went to the Lakers, so obviously he's the best player ever.
Right. Well, he will be for until the season starts, and then everybody will say, "Get this bum off the Lakers." You know how that'll go.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He'll be traded in February.
Yeah, I could see. Of course, I'm sure we'll get to the Cavs, but I could see Strus. I think that's a good spot for him. Positionally.
I think Strus is more of just like a solid NBA role player than Vincent is.
Right. And I mean, Spo had him playing like all NBA guys, but it's just not the loss that I think the general public is making it out to be. Because I mean, you got to think Kyle Lowry he started a lot of games last year.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like Gabe Vincent was just far and above the starting point guard. If Tyler doesn't get hurt, Strus probably isn't starting as much. I mean, they'll probably having a lot of Duncan Robinson minutes in there, and I mean, they don't have it listed on the screen you were looking at that shows who come in and who went out. But a major addition is just getting Tyler healthy. Which I know he was healthy for most of last year, but I mean, an entire postseason, especially that postseason run, especially in an NBA Finals where we just did not have the offensive firepower. I mean, and I'm not saying Tyler tips the series in any way, but that was a major thing.
He's your third best
we were
scorer,
needing, right?
And it's
So
not
I
a
think
debate.
Right. That's going to be a major addition that everybody, especially for all the people that only watch the Heat in the playoffs that think, oh man, y'all lost the starting point guard and the sharpshooter. Okay, well, we also have Tyler stepping in. Is probably going to be the starting point guard. And, Duncan Robinson made leaps and bounds as a defender, as a cutter.
Duncan Robinson was the worst contract in the NBA, and then he had a good postseason.
Exactly. Right. Right. So, I mean, and there will always be guys, I mean, Miami will always find guys that nobody's ever heard of and turn them
Absolutely.
into, they'll get them a $30 million contract next year or, whatever. So, I've definitely got faith in that. I have lost all faith in the Miami's going, whale fishing or whatever they call it, going hunting for whales. I've lost faith in that, but I have not lost faith in the development. I hadn't lost faith in the scouting. They'll replace Vincent and Strus are replaceable players. And I think there's definitely an argument to be made that the Heat could be better this year than last year, and deeper. I mean, I've already talked about Bryant. Josh Richardson is a good player. I mean, he's a good
your prototypical
player.
3-and-D guy.
Right. And perfect Miami Heat player.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about this, man. I'm excited for RJ Hampton. If anybody can unlock him, the Miami Heat can, which I feel that way about most anybody that, the Kai Jones thing. I first and foremost hope
bringing him to Miami.
I hope he gets the help he needs, but after he does, send him to South Beach, man. We'll make a monster out of him. But I wish I could talk myself completely into the whole Harden deal. I don't think it would ever happen anyway. But I mean, they've just got a knack for, it's like a military style, just the way that organization is run. And I mean, you can't ever count them out as an organization. And most importantly, even if I was not a Heat fan, I could never talk myself into counting out Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
I mean, until Jimmy proves to me that it's over, I still believe in him. So
and something as an outsider and not a Heat fan, I look at the Heat like they might not be a top 4 seed. I would actually say I don't think they will be a top 4 seed in the East.
I agree.
But over this year, they're gonna grow these guys like Josh Richardson into the role. They're gonna grow Thomas Bryant. Haywood Highsmith might step up. Jaquez, he's gonna become a great Heat player. Nikola Jovic, like all these guys are gonna have 82 games to become the Heat role players that they need, and then you sneak into the playoffs as a 6 seed, and then boom, Jimmy Butler's here. Like it's Jimmy Butler time. And then at that same time, it's Jimmy Butler time, but you've got all these other players that are ready and built for this role now. So that's what sets the Heat apart. And it's kind of the same thing with like how the Warriors were last year. I wasn't tripping over what seed we got or nothing like that. It's just let us get in and then we're gonna make it happen. I mean, we saw in the West, Grizzlies won God knows how many games and were the 2nd seed. Kings had their best season in decades and were the 3 seed. Lakers and Warriors with Steph and LeBron, boom, you're done. Like that's all that matters. Jimmy Butler shows up, you're done. That's just how it works. And
That's it.
speaking to the depth and everything about the Heat, I always talk about like the Heat, the Raptors, the Warriors, the Clippers. I feel like those teams set themselves apart in terms of just like development and finding the most random and almost forgotten players in the NBA and just making them click. Like, I mean, I think back to one former Warrior that ended up going to the Raptors, Chris Boucher, who
Mhm.
is a great center for them now. He was a G League guy for the Warriors, couldn't make our roster, just was not good. He goes to Toronto. He's a legitimate NBA starter now. Like he's a legit player. And there's so many guys on the Heat that you'll probably not know of coming into the year, and then at the end of the year, you can be like, "How'd they get that guy?"
Right.
That's just how it goes, and that's when you know that you're a true fan is whenever you're looking at these teams and you're not so much talking about your starters, you're talking about your Orlando Robinsons or
Right.
your Haywood Highsmiths. Like you're talking about those guys and how much they're going to impact your team this year. Like I mean, whenever I talk about Juan Toscano Anderson's impact on the bench and his energy, people will think I'm insane. But no, I love the man, and he was a key part to the Warriors getting back to the championship level. Gary Payton,
People
like guys like
underestimate
that.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and but the guys that watch and are loyal to teams and watch them for 82 games, you see those role players you grow to love almost more than your stars, and
Right.
that's whenever you have true fandom, in my opinion.
And see, like with the Heat, like Bill Simmons said during the playoff, well, during all the time. I mean, he called them the zombie Heat. You know, they zombie walk through the regular season, but then it's like they come back from the dead. And I mean, you get to April, and as long as they're in the playoffs, you can just erase those numbers of seeding
Yeah,
beside all those teams because Jimmy don't care. Spo don't care. I mean, they think they can beat anybody, and I mean, I'm with them, but
yeah,
it's gonna be a little tougher this year. I'll give them that. They made it a little bit tougher on us, but yeah, man, that's uh just a great organization top to bottom. It's I'm very proud to be a fan of them. I mean, I think of them kind of in the same way I think of the Warriors. I mean, just uh how you would want your organization ran, you can look at those two franchises,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's a good blueprint for it.
yeah. Now, one more thing before we move off from the Heat, ESPN has Jimmy Butler at the 4 starting. That ain't happening, right?
I would
Like
I
Kevin
not
Love's going to be the starter, and then probably just get
right,
off. Like he'll probably go off the floor after 6 minutes.
right. I'm interested to see what I would be a little bit interested to see is if eventually, and I mean, because Kevin Love is definitely getting older.
Yeah,
Um,
he looked good
I
last
would
year though.
right. That's one of the stories of the postseason to me is uh Cleveland just throwing him away.
Yeah,
I mean, for nothing. I mean, they definitely could have used him. I mean, that's why one team he went to the finals, and Cleveland, the lights were too bright or whatever they said.
yeah,
Uh, but I'd be interested to see if they would consider maybe sliding Bam to the 4 and letting Bryant start a little bit, and maybe having Robinson get an uptick in his minutes. Maybe as Thomas Bryant's back up, and Love playing backup minutes for Bam.
yeah.
Um, I could see potentially that happening. Yeah, I highly doubt Jimmy's going to play the 4.
That ain't gonna
Now,
work over 82 games.
right now in a playoff series, if in a closing lineup in Game 7 against the Celtics, and they got Tatum at the 4 with Kristaps at the 5,
Yeah,
maybe then that I could see it,
yeah.
but yeah, it's
This is
all
more like their closing lineup than their starting lineup.
right. So, but yeah, man, I'm excited. I'm excited for him. I mean, it was a gut punch to wake up and roll over and check my phone and see the Dame to Milwaukee news. I was so because I remember when I checked my phone and had that notification where he said, Shams had tweeted and said that he'd like to be traded to the Eastern Conference champion Miami Heat. I thought, there it is. I said, there's the championship right there. And so then, man, it was, I don't know how long, like 2 months or whatever, longer
My
than that.
God,
I
it was
lost track.
forever.
Yeah, man, it seemed like 2 years, but I mean, it was a rough couple of days after that. But like any delusional sports fan, I eventually talked myself back into, what we've got. Not worried about what we didn't get, just be concerned about what we have. And I mean, if I trust any coach in the history of the game to make it work, it's Eric Spoelstra.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, he's definitely, if not the best coach, one of the top three. I mean, Spo, Pop, Kerr, like those guys, you trust them forever. And yeah, and they've earned that. Let's move on. We'll not talk about these next teams near as much, I don't think, but those are obviously the two biggest teams in the East with the Bucks and the Celtics, and then your team with the Heat. Let's go to the Sixers. So the Sixers, what are they doing? Is James Harden playing? Who knows? He apparently went to Colorado after not showing up like immediately for training camp. He did end up going. They lose really nothing. Jalen McDaniels, who they kind of got for nothing at the deadline. Shake Milton, solid bench player. Georges Niang, winningest player in the 2020s. So just elite winner that they lost there. But really nothing crazy. I mean, Niang was probably their biggest loss. Good shooter, stretched the floor well. You bring in Pat Bev, another Daryl Morey guy, Mo Bamba, David Duke, Danny Green, Kelly Oubre for a steal late in the offseason.
Yep.
Devontae Smart. There we go.
Allenfield legend.
There we go. I wonder if he makes the team. He feels like he's been hanging around for a while.
Yeah, he was with the Heat there for a couple seasons.
Yeah. And then that's pretty much it there. Your biggest story here is, does James Harden play? And if James Harden plays, which James Harden do you get? Starting lineup, you're looking at James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, who I'm not fully sold on as this number 3 option on a team. I think he's a good player. I just don't think he's that yet. Tobias Harris is somehow still in Philly. You thought they'd get rid of him, but they did not. PJ Tucker, I mean, Daryl Morey, wherever Daryl Morey is, PJ Tucker is going to find a way there more than likely. And then Joel Embiid still there at the 5. Your bench, Patrick Beverly, DeAnthony Melton, Kelly Oubre, Paul Reed.
Paul Reed.
And then you still got Danny Green back there, Mo Bamba. Who else you got? Forkin Korkmaz, not a bad player at all down there. I mean, they've honestly got some better depth than the Celtics or Bucks. I mean, Pat Bev is a guy that you'll trust in any situation almost. DeAnthony Melton, solid bench scorer. Paul Reed looked pretty good last year. Kelly Oubre, if you can get him to buy in, I'd almost rather have him starting than Tobias.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Danny Green already looks good in the preseason so far. Danny Green's North Carolina fan, I love Danny Green, even though he did hurt Klay Thompson in the finals. But Danny Green's a good player and probably a guy that you might see in the closing lineup at some point if he does become the Danny Green that we all know. What are your thoughts on the Sixers?
A couple of things. I think I am a Tyrese Maxey believer. I watched him in high school in Dallas, and to see that kid then and what he's been able to do is really cool. What's going to be tricky is if he gets forced into a number 2 role.
Yeah,
I mean, if depending on how a potential Harden trade could pan out, I don't know if he's definitely don't know if he's on that level yet. I do really like him though. I am not a Tobias Harris fan. He's kind of like he reminds me so much of Chris Middleton, except not doesn't do any of the good things that Chris
Yeah,
Middleton
yeah.
seems to do.
I mean, it's crazy that like a player last year he averaged 14, 5, and 2.5, and it was a down year. Like in the past,
What
17 and 6, 19 and 6, 19 and 6. Like he's a solid, consistent player, but there's just something about him that just don't feel right.
right. The one thing I think that Philly actually has in their favor is the fact that Harden is in a contract year. Because I think
And
that's
it's
one thing that Harden
probably looking for his last max out.
right. I think that's one thing Harden's not going to play with is his money. I think if nothing can get him motivated to stay in shape and to not intentionally suck the
It's
way that he
strippers.
has on
Yeah.
his way out of a couple different teams now, it's the fact that he could mess up his last big payday.
Strippers and money.
We'll see. We'll see how that goes. We'll see if they end up trading him. Of course, that's going to be the story. I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to determine their season. That's going to determine possibly the next several seasons. Depending on the ripple effects that has. I think that's going to be very interesting, and especially to see what they get back. I just don't know if they're not. Of course, they're going to get. They may get 25 cents on the dollar. For him and
Yeah.
the situation and everything else. So, I mean, you'd almost rather just take the gamble on. We've got him in a contract year. If he sits out, they've got those new rules in the CBA where, he could potentially end his career, I mean, legally, if he really decided to hold out. But, man, I just can't see him uh, not reporting and not, which, I mean, like you say, he went to Colorado for the training camp. And from everything I've read and watched and heard, he was in great shape. Pat Bev said he was cooking.
I
So I
love
mean, now
Pat Bev.
all that's promising signs. You know what I mean? But I mean, at the same time, when he was trying to force his way out of Houston, he had that monster game to open the season and then sucked, and everybody knew that it was intentional. I
Yeah.
mean, just a reminder. For anybody that's interested in trading for me, I still got this, but I'm gonna hide it for a couple games and until I force my way out. But yeah, I think that I think the major difference being that he's in that contract year. I think that's actually the one thing on Philly's side in all of the James Harden drama.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think they could still have a good year. I like their bench pieces. Absolutely. I don't particularly like PJ Tucker starting at the 4 for the money he's making at the age he is
Yeah.
and will be, especially by the end of that contract. But I mean, when you've got James Harden and Joel Embiid, I mean, you give yourself a chance, and that's all anybody is asking for. I mean, that's all you can really hope for is a chance.
Yeah.
And they give themselves that. Just like the Bucks and Celtics, and any of these teams that have gone in all in enough to get a couple of this select group of guys that give you that chance.
Yeah. And Kelly Oubre, who, yeah, as I said, they got for nothing just a couple weeks ago. Last year in 48 games, averaged 20 points, 5 rebounds for the very bad Hornets. And he's a player that, I mean, whenever he came to the Warriors for a stint and was very not liked amongst the Warriors fan base. I personally was a big fan of him. I thought he played really well. We just did not have the team at the time. Klay
Right.
Thompson was still suffering injuries, stuff like that. Like it just didn't work. But he definitely had the talent. It's just like I don't know, something didn't click with him and the Warriors, and his bonehead plays didn't really fit Steve Kerr's system. But he's I mean, perennial 15 point per game player, and you got that for nothing at the end of the offseason. And I mean, this Sixers team, I would not be shocked if he's not your fourth best scorer. Maybe fifth if Tobias has a solid year again. But I mean, Kelly being your fourth or fifth scorer is, I mean, you'll take that because he's going to get he's going to get you 15, maybe in this role, probably more towards 12. But I mean, that's something you need off the bench.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I was really hoping. Of course, the rumors were that if Miami had landed Dame, that Oubre was soon to follow, and I was really looking forward to
He would
getting
have loved
Oubre on the
Miami.
Heat. Well, yeah, Miami would have loved him. I can tell you that too. But yeah, man. As far as the basketball side of it goes, man, I really like him. But yeah, I would have loved to get him on the Heat, but yeah, man, I think he'll be a key piece for them. I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised, if he doesn't get a few starts, or whatever, depending on the situations. But of course, everything we talk about is all, could be drastically changed by a freak injury, or whatever. But and I mean, that's going back to the depth for star power. I mean, that's a risk you take. I mean, like I said with the Celtics with Porzingis. I mean, if to me, if Porzingis goes down, they're cooked. I mean, I don't know what their backup plan is. On that. That's what I don't like about what came in as opposed to what went out.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know they didn't trade Iron Men. I mean, Rob had an injury history. Brogdon apparently had an injury so bad that a trade fell through earlier in the offseason. I mean, stuff like that, but just I'm personally not. And see, I was worried about when it came to Miami possibly trading for Dame. I mean, you'd think you do that, every day and twice on Sunday, but when you sit and think about it enough, you think, man, that's a lot of depth going out, in which like I say, I mean, of all the teams, I mean, Miami is the one I trust more than almost anybody to find the guys to put around the outside. But I mean, some of these teams are so top heavy that just one catastrophic injury that's it. And I mean, I feel like this 76ers team is pretty deep. So I mean that could be the difference. I mean, in the long run, I mean, especially for as far as seeding, I think that we're gonna get to our predictions as far as the seeding and the playoffs, but I think that if there was any way that a team could possibly steal the number one seed from either of those top two teams that we've already discussed, it would make that seed would be so much more valuable if Milwaukee and Boston were 2 and 3.
Yeah.
You would
make it Milwaukee
them,
and Boston beat themselves up that'd be huge.
Put them in a slugfest with each other and get one of them taken out. But what you don't want is to be any of the other seeds basically and have to go through both of them potentially to make the finals, like the Heat did this past year. And it seems like every year the Heat play the Bucks and then the Celtics. But yeah, man, I think this barring some weird stuff, with the Harden thing, barring them getting 25 cents on the dollar in a Harden trade, I think they could have a good year. Joel has been a lot healthier the last couple of years as opposed to his early years, so that's always promising. I mean, Harden's I mean, there's potential for a Harden injury or anything else like with anybody, but I could see them having a decent year. I like what they've got. I like their team, so.
That covers the top teams in the East. We're going to end this episode here, and we'll cover the rest of the teams in the next episode. So check that out if you like, and don't forget to like and subscribe and download it everywhere. Tell everybody you know. You'll be hearing much more from coast to coast in the coming months, and NBA season's almost here.